Good evening, everyone. Um, a warm welcome to everybody of you, and welcome you all to this part of the 16 Days of Action Against Gender-Based Violence webinar series organized by International Youth Alliance for Peace. So once again, I'm Hasanki Kasturiarachi, the moderator for today's evening. And let me give you a little bit of insight about International Youth Alliance for Peace once again. So IYAP is an inspiring youth-led organization that's all about making the world a better place. Over the past decade, it has focused on building peace, standing up for human rights, and empowering communities in Sri Lanka and beyond. So, wondering why today and why this session? As I mentioned, this is a session thread, and today is the 9th day of our 16 Days of Action Against Gender-Based Violence, a global campaign by United Nations to tackle the serious issues of violence against women and girls. So a big warm welcome to all of you joining from around the world. Your presence shows how important it is to come together to address these challenges. So thank you for being here. It truly means a lot. Now, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our amazing guest speaker for today, Ms. Purneshwari Ponnaiya. Ms. Purneshwari is a dedicated development expert with nearly 20 years of experience working on programs related to strategy, gender equality, and project management in Sri Lanka. She has worked in some of the tough contexts, including during times of conflict and post-war recovery. She holds a master's in development studies with a focus on gender and development from the University of Melbourne. And right now, she is the technical advisor for gender equality and social inclusion at the World University Service of Canada. So her expertise, passion, and commitment to empowering women and communities have made a huge impact. So we are incredibly lucky to have her here today with us on this session. And let me quickly take you through what's planned for today. So first, we'll hear from Ms. Ponnaiya as she shares her knowledge and experiences. After all, we'll be opening the floor for the questions for our Zoom audience. In that moment, we will be closing the YouTube Live, and we'll be opening chat box for only the Zoom audience. And finally, we'll wrap up the session with some thank yous, closing remarks, and a group photo. So without a further ado, let's start. Ms. Ponnaiya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hasange, for the wonderful introduction. I hope you can hear me. Is it audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for the great opportunity, and I'm very happy to be part of this. Yeah. So, uh, you said the floor, you will ask some questions, right? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I'll be asking questions after the presentation. So
Okay.
yeah, so you
Right.
can start with your presentation, and then we can open the questions at the, latter part of the session.
Okay. So, I am going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, ma'am.
Okay. now?
Um, I think still it's not visible for me.
No, no,
Um,
it's visible. It is
okay.
visible.
Uh,
No.
It's visible? Okay.
all right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to talk about the intersectionality and gender based violence. So let's look at what is intersectionality. So the concept of intersectionality first taught by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. Maybe some of you heard about that. This is in 1989. She's a professor. She's an African American woman. So she's the one first talking about the concept of intersectionality. So because she personally see and experience how the different aspects of a person identity, for example, we all have different identity, so the identity interact to create unique experience. The experience can be an oppression of experience or the privilege. So these intersection of identity shape how individuals experience and response to, for example, if there is a gender based violence. So I hope you all already have what is gender based violence during the series of this learning. So I don't want to talk a lot about gender based violence, but as you know, it's a harmful uh, act against a person, gender, based on the gender. So it can be various forms, and also affect people differently. So some are more um, affected, some are less affected. It's very hurtful. So there are so many consequences of gender based violence. So let's see, to look at more on the aspects of intersectionality. What is identity? So identity is a, you can see this diagram at the center of this circle. As an individual has an identity, so there are core dimensions of a person's identity. So these core dimensions are very internal. For example, this is related to race, ethnicity, class, sex, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, and their beliefs about faith, that is, religious beliefs, language, the color of the skin, and the nationality. So these are some of the examples of internal dimension. And the outer circle is about the secondary dimension, that is more on external dimensions. So here you can see, for example, the citizenship. So which country are you from? The geographical location, and your marital status, and your parental status, sometimes physical appearance of yours, and housing status. So there are so many examples of that influence your identity from the external point. So a person identity, as listeners, you can also self-reflect on yourself. What is my identity? So as a person, I can identify myself like as a woman of color, because my it is depends on my skin color, and where I am from. So I am belonging from the global south. I am from Sri Lanka. So this is, and also I can be identified as I am a woman from the South Asian country. So in terms of race, I have another identity. In terms of ethnicity, I have something else, and the class. And my sexual, the heterosexual, I can identify myself as a heterosexual. So in ability, I'm an able-bodied person. So my faith beliefs, I am a Christian. So my language, my mother tongue is Tamil. So it's a nationality. I'm a Sri Lankan. So I have so many identity. You all have identity. So always the identity matters, because when we are introduce ourselves, so we are introducing ourselves based on our core dimension as well as our external dimensions. So some of the characters are superior or privileged, some are inferior. So it varies for different geographical location, different context, different time. Like gender, this is also varies from various factors. So this is another diagram. This is the socio-ecological model we can call is. So this has also have a central element, the personal, and the social and cultural, the second layer, and the other one is organizational layer. So you can also working, sometime you are working for a state or a private sector or an NGO. So you also can introduce yourself. I am from this organization, or I am affiliated with this, or I am working for this. That is also one of the identities. So sometimes you are very proud to say I am working for this one, sometimes you don't like to say. So it's also depend, like a privilege or a inferior kind of things. So why I am telling this is, so when you talk about gender based violence, your identity will be an important factor. For example, if you consider the concept of intersectionality, it's actually a framework that recognizes the multiple aspects of identity. As I said, everyone has a multiple identity for ourselves. So this play a role in our lives and also in our experiences, because the identity, because of my identity, I face different experience. Some are very harmful experience, some are very good experiences. So this is related to my identities such as race or ethnicity or religion, or my sexual orientation, my age, my educational level, my economic level. So say various other factors influence this identity. So because of this identity, sometime it is increasing the marginalization and the oppression. So that means I can see, you see the intersection of these. I'm going to illustrate with the four circles here. So ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, and the sexual minority towards LGBTQIA community. So intersection means you say two circles when they merge together, like then there is a centerpiece. So that is called intersection. So here ethnicity and gender, when you see there is an intersection. So economic status and gender, there is an intersection. Sexual minority and socio-economic status there. So you can apply as various as factors that all has intersection. So, when you put gender based violence at the core of the cycle, so if a person, for example, a gender, if you take gender, you will be identified as a man, or you are identified as a woman, or you identified yourself by other gender. Like this is not binary, this is also talking about transgender and other sexual identity. So because you are a man, sometimes you have privileges. Because you are a woman, you feel oppression. But if you are a rich man, for example, your socioeconomic status is high. So if you are a rich woman, so a rich woman is more powerful than a poor man. So sometimes because the man is a poor, he experience more violence than a rich woman. So if you put the intersectional factor as an economic status, so though generally the men are more dominated in a patriarchal society, they are like sometimes act as perpetuators, whereas women are victims. But in a condition where a woman is socio-economically superpower, where a man is socio-economically less power, then the woman has more power. So that person experienced privilege. The other man, though he is in some context he is more powerful, he experienced oppression or some sort of suppression from the system. So this is why the intersectionality is very important. So you can't generalize gender-based violence, even though is talk about gender. So gender-based violence you can't measure or you can identify the root causes by looking at only the gender. So you have to look at other intersectional factors. That's why the intersectionality lens is important. I quote here as an example, uh, a low income woman of color. So women of color itself is a very low position. A low income is the socio-economic status that is itself further uh, put her to down. So she can face gender-based violence that is further compounded by poverty, systemic racism, and lack of access to resources. So if you consider this kind of women, is they are very marginalized and vulnerable, and they
Ma'am,
experience. Sorry.
I'm sorry to trouble you, ma'am. But I think we can't see the slides. We can only see the first segment called intersectionality and the GBV, and then we can't see the presentation goes on.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why. Wait.
Only the first phase is visible, and the next are not going.
Now. Uh,
Okay, now I can see it. I can see the identity slide. Yeah.
oh, I don't know why is that. Sorry for the trouble because I think maybe my now you can see the identity slide, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
I am saying changing to other. Can you see this?
Um, can somebody from audience clarify us?
Can anyone clarify whether you can see the ecological model slide?
Yeah, and ma'am, if you don't mind, you can put into the slide PowerPoint mode, so it can go automatically
So
from.
that's what I put on PowerPoint mode. That's why. Uh,
We can
why?
see the edit phase, like I mean, like only the editing phase is yet visible,
Mm-hmm.
not as a PowerPoint mode.
Okay. I'm sorry for this trouble.
No worries, ma'am.
It sometimes happen that maybe I can you see the now the
Um,
intersection slide.
yes, ma'am. Can you? Okay, yeah. When you click that icon, does it show it as a? I mean, like in PowerPoint mode to you?
Yeah.
I think to us, as to audience, it's yet visible as the editing phase, but I saw you clicking that icon as well. Uh,
Can you see that now I'm changing the slide? Can you see the concept of intersectionality right now?
no,
No. No.
we are in
Okay.
that
That
like GBV intersects with other systems oppression that.
okay, okay. So I will I can adjust. I don't know how, but I will adjust and I will show every slide. So sorry for that. I can.
Yeah, ma'am. Then we can go ahead with it, and at the end of the session, you can show the slides. That doesn't matter. That's totally fine.
Right, right. Okay, this is a concept of intersectionality. I am talking about the intersects of, because without the slides it's difficult to explain. That's what I want these diagrams, and so you see the intersects between two different identity, and when you put the gender-based violence at the core, So it's like certain group of people experience more severe complex form of violence than the other group of people. So if you just only think about gender, but then it is not you don't sometime it is invisible to identify some of the root causes of why this gender based violence is happening. And also victims always not women. So gender based violence happen to any sex and also any group of people, and it depends on the context and the other intersectional factors, and you always think about who has power. So sometimes a certain ethnic group is more powerful, sometimes certain racist group is more powerful, sometimes certain class is more powerful, ability is powerful, heterosexuality is powerful. So, like factors, some of the factors, age, older people are sometimes powerful, sometimes they are also powerless. So, always think about power, who has more power. So, that determines the experience of facing gender based violence is different from various group of people. So, sometimes people certain group of people experience more than the other group of people. So moving to the next slides, uh, I hope you can see. So the intersectionality, as I said, GBV cannot be understood uh, without the gender, without the lens of intersectionality. So if you put only the gender lens, you are losing some of the root causes. So sometimes the underlying root causes of gender-based violence, why it is that it varies. That's what I said. So normally the vulnerability or the gender-based violence happen because of unequal power structure. For example, if I can say migrant women, so that particular person is experience a workplace harassment because she is identified herself as a migrant. So her immigration status is matters. So sometimes she, as a migrant woman, she has to depend on the economy. She has to earn. So even though she is experiencing harassment, she she sometimes keep quiet. So she can't raise voice. In this context, the migrant woman is like a very low powerless position. And the other factors is role of cultural and social norms. Everyone knows about this. So there are certain cultures, there are accepted norms, that means it is okay. For example, child marriage is an issue, gender issue, but in certain customs it is accepted, child marriage is okay. Similarly, FGM, female genital mutilation, is accepted in certain contexts. So, because of these certain context, accepted norms prevailing in the context, that will further uh, uh, expose to gender-based violence in particular context. But sometimes it is not applicable in all over the world, but it only in certain contexts. So we sometimes we have to see what are the harmful gender and social norms prevailing in our community, in our context, if we want to address the gender-based violence. The other one is there are several forms of gender-based violence, as I said earlier. So it varies from people to people, and also like the forms of violence: physical, emotional, psychological, mental violence. Even now, digital space there are violence. So if you consider women with disabilities, that is an identity. So women with disabilities may face unique forms of gender-based violence. Sometimes they are neglected, they are abused by caregivers, but this is very different experience for the able-bodied women. Able-bodied survivors means the women affected by gender-based violence, but she is able. So these two experiences by same women category, but different experience. In a similar way, LGBTQ plus survivors sometimes difficult to report for violence due to fear of their they feel fear because of the people will discriminate them if they show their identity. In a similar way, the local, like indigenous people, also face some sort of discrimination. For example, sometimes the laws are not favoring them uh, because of the historical negligence. I hope you can see the slides and some of the things. So, some of the strategies to address gender based violence is I'm highlighting here more on the awareness and education. So it's about, educating about the community, different level of stakeholders is important. So it's about, you can educate in various ways. The awareness can be, I don't know the or the listeners who are the of this particular session, what is your background and what where are you working. But wherever you are working, it's regardless of your sector, you can educate and make aware of the people. So you can do it with various ways. So if you need, I can show it a lot of things, but the main things are like, some of the things are nowadays is very famous is the social campaign. So you can use in social media and creating a lot of awareness program in order to educate the people. And also sometimes you have to challenge the norms, because it's the norms, not all the norms, but there are harmful norms that affect women and men and other gender differently. So sometimes it is very harmful. So you have to challenge the norms. So it's depend on this different context. And the other one is, there are laws, to prevention of gender-based violence. There are so many laws. Sometimes the problem is the law itself only looking at the binary gender, men and women, but they are not putting the intersectionality factors, because unless you are not uh, putting the intersectionality factors, it is very difficult to identify what is the root cause of the gender-based violence, because the root cause may varies for context and geographical area, different community, etc. So that is very important to understand the intersectionality aspects when you are developing laws. And also your program, if you are doing something, all the program should be community focused and survivor centered approaches. Because normally, if you are doing some program from the top down approach, we call it, it sometimes it won't work. So you have to sit with the people and who are the survivors and also the community. Then from them you have to find out what are the support services available, and what is culturally appropriate kind of thing you can do with the community, and what are some of the accessible facilities available for the survivors and victims. For example, there are sometimes helplines, hotlines available, but they are not functional. So you have to find out all those things if you are doing some sort of awareness and education. And the other thing is inclusive policies. We can call it inclusive because you are considering all the intersectional factors when you are formulating policies. That is very, very important. Then you are addressing some of the barriers. That is also important in terms of, addressing some of the systemic barriers that is root cause of the gender-based violence, or the structural barriers. So there are systemic barriers as well as structural barriers. So those needs to be identified and addressed. Otherwise, whatever the programs you are doing, it is not useful to address gender-based violence. Always community engagement is important. So we had to work with a grassroots level organization, because they know the context, they are working with the community, they are closer to the community. So always engage with them. And also all the programs you had, it is important to engage with men and boys, because sometimes they are perpetuators, sometimes they are also supporters. So identify the champions, and also you had to work the positive masculinity approach. So identify some champions and to address some of the toxic masculinity. So as you know, the masculinity factors is like men perceive that they are some characters, that they are privileged and they are brave, for example, those kind of things. So identify those characters and use it for equality, like for addressing inequality factors. So those, that is the positive masculinity approach. Further, the policies and support system also important in terms of identifying the intersectionality factors. As I mentioned earlier, understanding what is in intersectionality, because this is, people think this is a new concept, but though it is started in 1989, still most of the people are doing binary gender thing in terms of analyzing anything. So they are just very blind, only looking at men and women. So that is not working. Uh, so it is important to educate the people and putting intersectionality at the center of when developing policies. That is also important in order to understand and identify the root causes, and also address whenever you are doing a program. That is like you are doing some sort of problem analysis, right? So but why we need to do the problem analysis is to identify the root causes. So when you address the root cause, it automatically most of the time addressing the problem and the issues. So these are some of the things I am mentioning about in terms of policies, because we are talking lots about policies, but the problem is effective enforcement of policies. So we, even though we develop policies for the sake of like pleasing the UN and pleasing other thing, but sometimes it's in certain context it is not implemented properly, even in Sri Lanka, I can say. So it's we have the Domestic Violence Act, but how far, how effective it is implemented, and if there are some reporting happen, what is the mechanism in place, whether it is effective, whether it is harmful to the perpetuated or the affected, whether it is supporting or increasing the domestic violence, those factors matters. And the other one is equitable access. This is like as I mentioned earlier, like accessibility is an issue in terms of uh, perpetuating gender-based violence. For example, if you don't have accessibility for person with disabilities, then that person is, experiencing some sort of marginalization and vulnerable, and they are affected severely by the uh, gender-based violence. The other thing is important is the when you are making decisions. So whatever the decisions you are making, always you have some sort of evidence. So that's why it is important to have the data which is disaggregated. So when you have disaggregated means you consider the intersectional factors. So then only you can analyze why this particular group of people affected more than the others, why this happening in this area all the time, gender based violence is high in this particular community, or why it is how it is affected in terms of disability, how it is affected in terms of ethnicity. All the intersectional factors is important. That is very challenging as well when you are collecting data, and also getting the community feedback when you are making decisions. Those things are very important. And also the other problem we can see is like the people are working in isolation. So there is no holistic approach, the sector wise, because health sector, education sector, social services, legal system, everything is interconnected, in order to address the gender based violence. But because of the country context, or because of certain sectors, they are not working together, they are not collaborating, they are individually doing a pocket of activities. So when they're collaborating only, they can see the intersectional aspect and the importance to address collectively and collaboratively. So I think, for the sake of time, I can go to the other sector. Like, so what I am going to tell is intersectionality shifts the focus from individual acts of violence to the system of oppression. So why particular group of people is affected, whether it can be women or it can be men or women with disability or men from lower caste people. So anything, the system of oppressions that perpetuate gender-based violence. So this is important. The intersectionality is very important for policymakers and all the development practitioners and advocates to design any intervention that address the root causes of violence in a way, sorry, that is inclusive, nuanced, and effective for all survivors, particularly those from marginalized groups. So I can conclude this. In case if you want to ask any questions, I can answer.
Yes, thank you so much for the insightful presentation, ma'am. So I've got a few questions as you were mentioning about identity as
Yeah.
an important part of this issue we are discussing on, and you were talking about education as well. So I would like to ask now. I mean, having sessions and maybe in schools or universities, we are talking in this topic, but not maybe in larger scale or specifically, but we are talking. But yet, I think the society is yet to, yet to be on the point. They know this is what we are seeking, but they are not doing it. They are not following it. So how would you see that? Uh, like we have the ability to know it, we have the ability to educate about it, but we are not following it. So how do you see this?
Yeah, it's a very, very practical, important question. I can see education changes the world. That's the motto I can see. But right education, even in the education sector, the discriminatory practices are still there. For example, how the teachers, if you take a schools, forget about university, take the schools, because school is very fundamental where the gender stereotypes happening, right? When during the early childhood development, or when the children are like growing age, that is the place it is important to invest in children and educate them to be like respecting others, and also like understanding each other's issues, as well as not being a conscious biased person. Like, sometimes we are taught from our parents and the community, and also like our neighborhood, this is acceptable because you are from this particular community, or you are the eldest of the family, you are a woman, you are a man, you are a girl or a boy, you are from upper caste, you are from a rich family, your father is an engineer. So there are so many identity factors for the children. So sometimes they think, oh, because of that I am superior, I am more privileged, so these people are inferior. So it will start to educate the children. So the teachers has a very big role. Sometimes teachers themselves harming the children, like how that we can call it as a violation of child rights, equal rights every child has, but teachers sometimes how they treating the children. A doctor's child is treated differently from a farmer child, so but in the same class. So where those are the things happening at school level. So education means it's not like going to study mathematics or science or language and everything, coming home and passing the exam. It's like rights, our what is our being a human being. That sometimes soft skills we can say. like so how, what are the manners, how we treat people. But we have conflict of issues and conflict of interest. But as working, as studying in the same class, everyone is equal, right? So treating those kind of things without unconscious bias in terms of making decision judgmental, those things start from school. So the education means proper education is important from that age. Otherwise, if you are grown up like a 20-year-old or 30-year-old child, you are not child, you are an adult, then it is very difficult to change your perception, because you already believe. For example, I'm always telling when I'm doing training, if you are taught from the childhood, okay, this color is red, but actually it is black, so you learn this is red, so it is very difficult when you grown up to change this is black. So it is a similar way, you have to educate from the childhood what is right, how to respect others, what is integrity. Those are very like the values of human beings. Those things are very important, right? So what's the problem is like we are learnings from the school, like to pass the exam, to enter the university, to get a job, not being a good human being, not being like treating others like me, so not loving each other. So these kind of things are like sometimes you are getting it from your parents, your childhood, neighbors, your teachers, everyone is influenced. That was the ecological cycle I saw in the map. The center part is very influential in your identity, so that should be tackled in a way, so you become a person who is very generous, who is treating people equally. So you don't see the difference between the oppression and the privilege. But though you know those things, but you don't treat the people right, you have to treat them equally. So if you are identifying those things, then you see always the power, I say, or who has more power. So power is also a relative thing, right? Comparing you and me, who has power? Comparing me and my husband, who has power? Like comparing, I am the youngest in my family, I have elders, so who has power? So it's a kind of relative factor. So that is also interacting with this. So it is very good to understand those things from the childhood onwards, and also like thinking about the intersectionality, because I think it's very important to teach it from school onwards, like why it is matters. And also like not only for the sake of studying this kind of, but also for the practice. So then I think everyone is like um, treating equally. It will start from changing from myself first, then the whole community will be changing. So why people are ignorant sometimes? Because though they learn it, because the environment. So for example, I'm a person like want to do the thing, want to treat everyone equal and everything, but my working environment don't allow me because of my identity. So sometimes I will be ignorant, but there are ways and means to do it. For example, like okay, if I can do alone, then it is very very difficult. So that's why I said being as a collaboration, collectively doing things, become alive, and we can have a part of the network. We can't do alone. It's a collective effort.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. And you mentioned about some, I mean, like migration. I mean, how gender-based violence affect in migrants. So, in that sense, I would like to ask, and that moment, what I got in my mind was refugee crisis. So, in a let's take this to a practical world. Now we are having some wars in the world right now, even. So if my numbers are not forgotten, so if we talk about the Ukraine war, like they have 41 million population, and I think more than 1/4 is dislocated right now. and they're searching for other countries. And some may some may go to other countries, and some people who, as you mentioned, let's say people who are not able, they left out in the country, and some may go to some other countries as well. So both of the, in both scenarios, they face that issue. Maybe when they are going to another country as a refugee, so they might face it. And people who are left out in the country, who are not able to do stuff on their own, they face that same situation, right? So how do you see this situation as on?
Yeah, this is another practical aspect. Migration is happening for various reasons. One is the war. So when you are when you become a migrant, like, that means you, in a way, you are affected from your own country. You lost sometime, if it is war, you lost your home. Sometime you lost your relatives. You lost your asset. So those are also, I said, as a person identity, right? As a person identity, because I have wealth, so I have some sort of power. I have a home, and then I am powerful than homeless, like, for example. So those things you are losing when you become migrant. So you are moving from one place to another place as a migrant. So the new place is, everything is new. The people don't know who you are, right? Who, maybe you are a very rich person in your community, but when you become migrant, you are not that. Your identity changes because of the migrant status. So normally migrants are very vulnerable, because in all the country, the migration migrants have special consideration, and also they are treated equally. They are the laws to protect migrants, right? So migrants, when they go into other place, or even within the country, you become migrant, even you are going from your own country to other country. So the new place, you have to depend on everything. For example, if you want to get a job in a new place, you have to please people. You can't say, I was like a very rich person, I gave a lot of things. So here you don't show any your previous identity. You have a new identity, that is migrant. So in that context, you have less power. So you had to depend on, in order to get a job, you had to please the people. In order to get the support, for example, the new place, they will, you have some provisions. So in order to get that, sometime, if you are a woman, this is a true story. This is the fact. Like, sexual bribe is happening, like, in order to get some sort of provisions. You are a woman, so the service provider asking some favor, sexual favors. So you sometimes had to, you can't refuse. You had to adjust according, if you want to get it. So you are violating your according to your mind. And also, like, even though this is not acceptable, you don't have a voice. You can't raise voice. You can't report someone to, like, this person asked sexual bribe. Then what will happen, it has a counterproductive, because you don't get the support, for example, sometime. So these things are making you more vulnerable. But even though this is the situation, the laws protecting you migrations. But in certain countries, uh, for example, some developed countries, the laws are very, very strict. So if you report these kind of things, there is a reporting. Again, you need to understand what are the existing mechanism available for you, and the language. So if you don't know the language, then you are more vulnerable. So I said those factors also, like, influencing, making you more vulnerable, making you more powerless. That will make you to experience more violence, right? They sometimes verbally abusing you, then you have to tolerate that. You can't say zero tolerance, even though there's a policy zero tolerance, because you had to be keeping quiet in order to survive, because you are a migrant, right? You have to get to settle that place. So you will keep quiet. So the sexual based gender based violence is high when the migration happen. So especially the migrants are affected more. They are very vulnerable. That's why the migrant policies are supporting migrants, and there are mechanism you can report it, and you can legally fight those kind of things, and those kinds things are there. But for that, you need to aware about things, what are the things, how you are going to do. And the important is language is important, and you can't do individually, you have to do collectively, like as a migrant woman, few people together to go, and then you have power, like more power. So in that way you can address those things, but this is still, that is an issue.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. So having on mind how language, collectivity, understanding, and everything, now we can open the floor to our audience. Before that, we'll be stopping the YouTube live streaming now. Thank you so much, the YouTube audience, connecting with us today. We value your participation so much. So now we'll be opening the floor to Zoom audience. You can ask your questions, rather a comment that you have to give. You can unmute yourselves and speak on. Even if you can't speak, you can put your questions to the chat box, and I'll be very glad to read that out for you.
So you do not hesitate to ask any things, because this is very important and interesting topic, intersectionality. You can reflect yourself, who I am, right? Everyone, who, what is my identity? So why I sometimes I'm considered more often about my identity. Sometimes there are sometimes least identity, I'm not considered those things. So I'm always want to introduce myself as so and so. Why is that? It is related to power and acceptance and belongings. So no one wants to be a person of isolation. I want to belong to my community, my society, my, my people. So that always, like, the intersectional factors is very influencing in those spaces. So it's a kind of reflection for you. You also consider about yourself, like, who am I, what is my identity, why it is matter, things like that.
Yes, ma'am. So yeah, any questions? Yeah, with the bearing silence, I think we are good to conclude today's session. Um, so yeah, give me a moment. Okay, so let me conclude the session then. Thank you, first of all, thank you so much, Ms. Ponneya, for your truly insightful and inspiring talk. Your words have given us so much to think and act on. And let me have a moment to thanks the audience that who were with us throughout the time. So if you like, you have joined and you have shown the collectivity, as we talked earlier, how the collectivity can impact the society on. So yeah, so be with us in our future sessions as well. We value your presence today as well. And we are good to conclude, but before we officially conclude the session, let's capture this moment. So for that, I invite all of you to switch on your cameras if possible, if you are comfortable, so we can document this special gathering. So I can give you a few moments to switch on your cameras and get ready. Okay, so I think we are good to have the photo session now. I'll give the count and you can pause. So 3, 2, 1, go. Once again, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much, Mrs. Monaya, for being